And we are back. Hello and welcome to the Well Played Podcast. I am your host, Warren Curtis. This week we're talking about Switch 2, Starfield, and how fanboys are toxic. But before we get into it, let's talk about what it is we do here on the show. We're here to talk about gaming from a mature adult perspective. What that means is we aren't going to get into console wars, we don't wave a fanboy flag, and we don't get into petty arguments about gaming. What we will do is talk about facts about games and the gaming industry in simple language and give our opinions on why these things matter. We will talk about gaming as an adult and as parents, and we will also talk about the games we've been playing. You can find more from us on YouTube. The link is in the description in your mobile app, and on Twitter by following Amarren at Amarren Studios. That is AMARREN STUDIOS. We are available as an audio show on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you want to catch your pods. Be sure to like us, rate us, ring that bell, because all of that helps everyone else find the show. And we want those comments. We want your feedback. So let's hear it. All right. So before we get into it, there's been a notable absence. I've been gone for quite a while here now. I think the last episode I did was the end of July, episode 7. I want to say the 27th of July, somewhere around there. Anyways, and I did talk a little bit about, at that time, how I was starting my chemotherapy treatment. I believe my first treatment was the following Monday. So with that kind of in your mind, think about how that went forward. I had my chemotherapy treatment, which is it's a different treatment than what I had before. Beforehand, I was on an oral chemotherapy with my radiation. This time, I was on I am on a IV treatment with, I don't have them with me, with an oral chemotherapy as well. And those two kind of working together beat the living crap out of me. I'm talking no energy for like a week at best before I even felt remotely close to human. And then the next week was really rough as well, but I was kind of able to walk around and be a bit more mobile. And then after that, the week after that was what they call your recovery week, which wasn't great. And then back into treatment again. So by the time I was basically feeling okay, I was getting an injection the next day and bringing it back down again. And that was the last injection I had. And the process has repeated itself. This is my second off week. So last week I was off doing recovery. And then this week I'm also doing recovery. I was supposed to have treatment on Wednesday. I didn't. Today's Friday. I didn't get my treatment on Wednesday because my liver failed a screening test. And that's because my liver's being overactive. It's probably just as a result of processing things, for foods and stuff like that. And they didn't want to stress it too much. So they've spaced it out a little bit while they adjust things. And so my next treatment is next Wednesday. So with kind of all that in mind, I am going to kind of modify how I'm doing the show a little bit and try to keep it a little shorter and a little simpler for me with that. So we're going to be doing, I'm still going to do like the news recap, but I'm not going to do like deep dives like I've always done in the past. And I'm also going to talk a bit more about kind of one topic. Pick a thing that I want to talk about that week and talk about it. And I'll still answer questions and do things like that as we go to it. But that's kind of what to expect going forward. I'm going to be communicating a lot more of this stuff as well on the old interwebs through Discord, because this morning I set up our Discord page. I'll put the link in the episode description so you can join up and join the community. Just let's see here if it's there. It is. So you can join the community and you can talk about it. You're also going to get notifications about if you follow the content notifications page. You can actually just click follow on it, and it will ping you every time you get we get a new episode drop, or I go live on Twitch or something like that. And that is discord.gg/BQCU87UC. So as I said, I'm going to put that in the description on YouTube so you can join up a lot easier. Obviously, I'm not boosted or anything yet, so I don't have my own short URL, which is kind of weird. I might do a redirect to it later. We'll see. Anyways, with all that said, let's get into it. News. We have some Switch 2 news. Switch 2 was shown at Gamescom behind closed doors to certain developers. This comes via Jez Corden, who originally broke the story, and then Eurogamer, who did some follow up and kind of sourced it out. Reportedly, they were running Breath of the Wild at a high resolution frame rate at the show, or at this kind of showcasing of it. They also ran the Unreal 5 Matrix demo, which was a pretty impressive demo. So with that in mind, it's kind of putting it on par with the PS4 Pro in terms of power, but obviously in a handheld form factor. So that's an interesting capability. And we're expecting this to launch in 2024. Nothing about that's changed. That's still the target. Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo's going to do, but it needs to come out next year. It should have probably already come out in the eyes of most people. So it coming out next year is kind of at the late end of the game. I think they needed to space out Switch 2 launch from Tears of the Kingdom launch, because obviously we have there's kind of like a demand there, right? So if you're saying, hey, come spend more money than we've ever asked you before, $70 American for a game in Tears of the Kingdom, and then we're going to try to shove a new $400 piece of hardware down your throat, it might not go over near as well. So I think spacing it out was the right choice. It would probably have been better if Tears of the Kingdom could have come out in 2021, but anyways, or 2022 rather. But anyways, that's not the world we live in. So what do we expect out of the Switch 2? Kind of what I expect out of it, at the very least, is we need to have that performance. It needs to be at least on par with, as I said, with that PS4 Pro. That needs to be a target for it. Now, the rumors are that it has 12 gigs of RAM. The Switch 1 has 4, so that's a good bump. And it runs DLSS. I've heard both reports here, but I'm going to incline to believe one of them more than the other. DLSS 3.5. The other rumor was 3.1. 3.5 makes most sense to me because it allows more legacy support. And not to get into the boring tech stuff with that, that just makes more sense from a developer point of view to put DLSS 3.5 on it than 3.1, because that back catalog support or legacy support of previous DLSS iterations. And the reason why is you may have a developer going, yeah, we know, and it's probably a Nintendo developer, like somebody at the Mario team or something, going, yeah, we know it's going to have DLSS support, but we don't know which one, so we're just going to make the game in this iteration. And then they go with 3.5. Okay, well, it's compatible. 3.1, it wouldn't be compatible with everything, right? So 3.5 makes more sense there. Obviously, it needs to be a hybrid form factor. It has to be mobile and a home console at the same time. I don't think changing that makes any sense, because then you would be splitting the user base up again from handhelds to home consoles, and I don't think that's going to fly as much. Everybody else is trying to replicate what the Switch is doing right now by coming out with the ROG Ally and the PlayStation handheld. This is a way of doing that. You know, why would you move away from that, right? Nintendo's already got the market kind of figured out there. With the Steam Deck being released, we know power's there and the power availability is there. And with Nintendo having a partnership with NVIDIA, that's where I think the huge advantage is for them. NVIDIA has an amazing ability to put system on a chip and make it efficient, make it small, make it kind of power conscious, right? Which is very important when it comes to handheld things. And obviously optimizing towards that is important. And having the partnership with NVIDIA, I think, is going to be beneficial there with that. I think if we're realistic here, we're not going to be seeing 4K as a standard on the Switch 2, or whatever they want to call it. I'm going to continue calling it the Switch 2. We're not going to see 4K 60 as being the standard. I think more than likely we're going to be looking at a 1440p, and it's going to get upscaled to 4K through DLSS. And at 60, 1440p at 60 frames is adequate for everything that we're doing here. We're talking a handheld device, so big, 8-inch screen, 9-inch screen, something like that. 1440p at 60 is ideal, and that'll work. That'll work plenty for what they're doing there. As I say, obviously being able to upscale to 4K if need be, or if it's maybe in console mode or something like that, would be advantageous, and that's where DLSS comes in. To be honest, that's a big part of why it exists. So let's utilize that, right? I think obviously it's got to be backwards compatible, right? You can't again split that user base again. Nintendo can only squeeze the juice out of that orange so many times, and getting people to rebuy titles over and over and over again is going to wear thin. And the way Nintendo has structured itself now with subscription services and things like that, introducing these libraries in the Nintendo Switch Online, that all fits into that kind of lineup. So it should be like that, I think. There's all sorts of possibilities there. I would love to see like Hall effect sensors on the Joy-Cons. I don't know. We don't even know if it's going to have Joy-Cons. We don't know how that's going to work. But I want Hall effect sensors in any of their analog things. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I definitely want better than whatever pieces of crap sensors they got off of Wish for the Switch one, because they're horrible. They're horrible. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google Hall effect sensors. HALL effect sensors. That'll kind of teach you anything you need to know about what I mean by Hall effect sensors. Those are the go-to sensors. They don't drift. They can't drift because of the way they're built. So, other than that, I really can't think of anything else that I need to have on a Switch 2, right? I'd say it needs to have backwards compatibility. Bluetooth out of the gate at launch would be great. It was so funny to see when they launched Bluetooth on the Switch. It's like, wait, you can't just you just turned it on is what you did. You had the receiver built in this entire time, and now you just turned it on, you idiots, right? Like out of the gate, we need high-end Bluetooth support. I expect it'll have the USB 3.0 communication functions. I believe it'll be a USB-C connector because that's going to be the European Union standard next year. So it makes sense just to go with that. What do you guys want out of it? Let us know in the comments, or let us know on any of the socials, or join our new Discord and you can talk about it there. I think it'd be interesting to see what everybody wants out of that, and we can have kind of cool conversations there and discuss that into more depth. Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter game, it's got a sequel in development according to rumors. I got this via Insider Gaming, but everybody's kind of been running with this all week. The game was very well received amongst fans of the series. That shouldn't be surprising at all. That they're going to be working on a sequel, like it's the logical next step. But what I think is important here, and why I wanted to talk about it, is what do we want out of that sequel? Because I think what I want out of it is a lot different than maybe what some of the more hardcore fans want. The setting and the place it is and all that's kind of moot to me. Like, as long as it's got to be at Hogwarts, it's whatever time and place. I think it'd be cool to be there kind of maybe at the same time as Tom Riddle, or explore that kind of storyline a bit, but I can see why they want to distance themselves from the movies as much and introduce their own characters as well. So, whatever narrative they want to go with it. But as far as gameplay goes, it needs to get thicker. Hogwarts Legacy was, everybody called it an RPG, and it was by definition RPG, but I call it an RPG light, or diet RPG, whatever you want to call it. RPG Zero. All the flavor, none of the fun. It had, it was good. Like, it was fun, but it didn't have, like, any sort of karma system, which was odd, being as you get to play it. You could be a Slytherin, or you could be a Gryffindor, you could be a Hufflepuff or a Ravenclaw. And those choices, other than where your character went to sleep at night, really didn't have lots of consequences. And they all need to have their ups and downs, right? There needs to be an advantage to picking one, and it also has to be a disadvantage to picking that one, right? You get locked out of something, so it forces replays and it forces experience changes, right? And then a true karma system, when you're out in the world and you could just break into somebody's house, a Alohomora your way in, and start stealing all their crap. Again, where was the consequences of that? Like, they didn't come after you, they didn't even say anything to you, right? So I would like a little bit more dynamic with that. Obviously, a karma system with any dynamic would be an improvement, but like, I keep on going back to one of the games I think that did it the best was New Vegas. Fallout New Vegas had the karma system where you aligned with these people, and then these people automatically didn't like you because of that. And that was really good. That was really important, and mimicking that in this sense would make a lot of value to it. People don't like you because you're a Slytherin. You're untrustworthy, or Slytherins don't like you because you're a Gryffindor and you're a hero and a god amongst men, or whatever you want to call it, right? So I think having those dynamics would be a lot better to it. I'd say a little bit more dynamic, and I'm using that word a lot, but I mean it in that sense. A lot more width to the dialogue and those options, and Radiant Quests. I think Radiant Quests would be a huge addition to it. And other than that, just thicken it out a little bit, color in the spaces, and give us some stuff. And I think they will work on it. Like, this was a very good, solid first effort. They needed to play it safe. They needed to, bunt and not swing for the fence necessarily. Just get something out there that is good and playable, and a real Harry Potter game that wasn't a mobile game, that wasn't a Lego game, something kind of standalone. And they did it, I think, with that. Um, and again, what do you guys want out of a sequel? What do you expect out of this? You can jump into the Discord there and let us know. Talk about it, right? Starfield. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of this game. It's a small little indie game from a small studio called Bethesda. It's launched this week. It launched on Tuesday to over 1 million concurrent players. That's 1 million people playing it across all the different platforms simultaneously at the same time, and over 6 million unique players. So over 6 million unique players so far. That is the biggest launch in Bethesda history. And the reason is that it's been able to do that is because the game has been put into the best position by Bethesda out of any of their previous titles, really. You got to consider it's on Game Pass, so it's reaching automatically like 28 million people have access, are on Game Pass. So there's 28 million people that could just turn on that game and play it if they wanted to. And further to that, and this is probably because of the delays to the game, but further to that, there's been very few bugs compared to most of their titles, and we'll talk a bit more about that later. But a bit more of the news about that, and this is the Angry Fanboy stuff from the beginning. It's getting review bombed on Metacritic from Angry Fanboys, and that's just not cool. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So lots more Starfield talk later on in the episode. Moving on from Bethesda, though, we've got the Indiana Jones reveal. Bethesda announced just around the same time as the acquisition by Microsoft, I believe, that a Indiana Jones game is coming from Machine Games, which is the studio that made Wolfenstein. But it's being executive produced by Bethesda's Todd Howard. And Todd Howard said during an interview with Esquire, he was talking a bit about the game. Obviously, a little bit kind of around the edges. Can't go into the meat and potatoes of it, but he mentioned the game is obviously exploring stuff. And I quote here, it's about him. So if you're playing the game, how do you feel about playing versus just watching? And end quote. So, that, again, that doesn't surprise me. Obviously, it's going to be an exploring game. It's going to be you're hunting for relics, but you're killing Nazis in the process. Sounds a little familiar. Uncharted and Tomb Raider owe everything to Indiana Jones existing in order for them to have been successful games and franchises beyond that. Indiana Jones needs to live up to that expectation. It needs to be better than Uncharted 4. In my opinion, it needs to be better than Uncharted 2, which is the best game in the series, in my opinion. And it needs to take lessons from what Tomb Raider did wrong with the reboots and touch on that. Anyways, before I get talking into what I think the game should be, he did say he wanted to talk more, but he couldn't yet. But at the end of the interview, he did give his trademark little smirk, and then he said, "We'll talk again next year." So I'm thinking, and the interview was about Starfield, obviously, but I'm thinking that is a good indication that we're going to be seeing more Indiana Jones stuff next year. And as I said, it's coming from Machine Games. They're a subsidiary of Bethesda. They make the Wolfenstein games, but Todd is the acting executive producer on the project, which might be confusing to some, being as he's the creative director of Bethesda. So he does the executive producing work and creative director work on Skyrim, on Fallout 4, on he did Fallout 3 as well, on Starfield, and then going forward, he's doing that on the Elder Scrolls 6 and on Fallout 5. And I believe that is kind of where he wants to end his saga. He wants to hand the torch over the next two titles. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he doesn't want to be part of it anymore. I think it's just, it's almost 60. By the time he finishes those games up, he's going to be in the 70s. It's time for him to move on and hand the torch over. Him as an executive producer and how that kind of came to transpire, though, is actually really interesting. So back in 2009, remember, Bethesda was independent. They were, ZeniMax Studios, but they were still independent. They just released Fallout 3, and Todd made a pitch to Lucasfilm about doing a Indiana Jones game, and Lucasfilm wasn't really interested then. Lucasfilm was in a weird spot at that time as well. Excuse me. So what happened there is, they kind of went, not right now, and everybody kind of put it on the back burner and all that, and they made Skyrim and then Fallout 4 and ultimately into Starfield, and here we are now, where Lucasfilm got bought by Disney, and Disney's looking at this proposal, and they're going, "Hey, that's a pretty good proposal. Why don't we do that?" And now Bethesda's in this position where they're staring down the barrel of this Microsoft acquisition. They got Starfield in the pipeline. They know what the next few games coming out of Bethesda are going to be and what that looks like, and they didn't really know where to put it. So Machine Games gets it, which works. Machine Games does really good work. But because it's Todd's vision and his idea, coming in as the executive producer helps him facilitate that, while still giving Machine Games the autonomy needed to, not the autonomy needed. I'm sick, so things are a little hard to pronounce sometimes. The freedom to do what they needed to do, and what they felt was needed to do. That creative freedom, I think, is still going to be allowed over at Machine. Todd is a huge fan of Indiana Jones. I think if you look at any of his E3 conferences, he's always standing there in his leather jacket, and he kind of looks like a Wish version of Indy, and with a tussle of hair or whatever. But he's mimicking that for a reason. He likes that. He likes the aesthetic. He likes the world building and stuff that has happened in Indiana Jones. His first dog. He said this in an interview. His first dog was named Indy. So I think he's a pretty big fan of the series, of the IP, and I think having him in charge of it is a good choice, and putting it in good hands. With Machine Games' involvement in that, and kind of what I want out of that, is Machine Games is really good with combat. They're really good with mobility. I would like that to have kind of those aspects where it's needed, but to have that Todd feeling of, when we're exploring and when we're uncovering things, that magic, that whimsy that he has been able to kind of patent onto things since Oblivion. He's been doing this, and it's been really good. And when you pick up something and there's you're reading about it in the information sheet on it, and there's a story there and things like that kind of stuff will be huge in an Indiana Jones game. So kind of combining a Bethesda style RPG with a Machine Games fast-paced, mobility-based shooter, I think is really good. So, we'll have to see what it looks like when it comes, but I think there's a lot of potential there, and the right people are behind it, in my opinion. Moving on, we have Stray. That was the post-apocalyptic cat game that everybody was all rah-rah about last year. Is getting an animated movie adaptation. Again, here's another thing that shouldn't surprise anyone. It's one of those things when you read it, you go, "Yep, that makes sense." Um, that game was a legitimate contender for Game of the Year in 2020, 2022. Blah, blah, blah. To in a lot of circles, it really was, and even on, I believe, on the Game Awards, it was in the finals for that too. Um, it was a very fun game. If you haven't played it, it's only like a 4, maybe 5 hour long campaign. It's there's no humans. There's just a cat and his robot, and it's really cute, really fun, um, comical, but makes you think in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of potential there for a an animated feature. And the people making it is Annapurna Animation, and Annapurna Animation is a division of Annapurna Interactive, who made the game. So that also works as well. Having creative control over the IP for the animation side also makes a lot of sense to it, and you get a little bit more control over it. Next in the news list, we have a possibility. And this is a rumor, so I'm not saying it's confirmed or anything, but there's a very strong, I'm going to say 75% chance of a Nintendo Direct happening in the next week or two. We typically have one in around the Tokyo Game Show, which is happening soon. We also are kind of due for one. They just did a mini direct that was all focused on, well, it wasn't a direct, they called it a presentation, I think, about Super Mario Wonder, which is the new Mario platformer. But we have a lot of other things coming from Mario, or from Nintendo, including other Mario games actually, and that Princess Peach game and Luigi and all that stuff that they need to kind of flesh out and show us. Um, we have the fall and winter game schedule for 2023 that they need to kind of flesh out, as well as the spring 2024 stuff that they should be showing us, the teasers, the intros in. So it should be a bigger show. Again, it's just a rumor right now, but Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo's going to do. That is that should be a bumper sticker. But I expect some good things out of this, and I do expect it to happen in the next week or so. Sega hit Daytona USA 2. You remember punching quarters into the arcade for that one? Daytona USA 2 is finally coming to home consoles after like a 20-year wait, with a new port dropping on November 9th, 2023. But there's a catch. What's the catch? It's only going to be playable inside the new Yakuza game, like a Dragon Gaiden. It's going to go by its non-licensed name there, Sega Racing Classic. For those of you that never played a Yakuza game or not familiar with it, you can go to the Sega arcades in the game, right? Each city has like an arcade in it, maybe two, and you can go into these arcades and play old Sega games. And finally, we're getting Daytona USA 2 in there. As I say, it's going by Sega Racing Classic 2. Is it Sega Classic Racing? No, it's Sega Racing Classic. It's going to go by that because Daytona has a trademark on it. It was a licensed thing with Daytona, like NASCAR Daytona. So, because that trademark's owned by International Speedway Corporation, which is a subsidiary of NASCAR. So it was a license deal. So this way they get away with paying royalties back to Daytona for it. So it's not the way everybody was expecting it to come back, but it's coming back. Anyways, that kind of does it for the news. As always, there's been a lot of rumors in this section. So, in particular with this week as well, I kind of touched on a few things that haven't been confirmed yet. And with that, just remember, nothing is ever confirmed until it is confirmed. And even then, nothing launches until it launches. So remember, dates and things change. All that stuff happens. And a lot of it happens where we don't see it and we don't know about it. That being said, I don't report things that I don't have a good confirmation on. And by that, I mean, I have a solid source, multiple sources, and I'm getting it from multiple places. And these are trustworthy sources with a reason. there was actually one more thing I did want to talk about with that Nintendo Direct. I have on very good authority that there's going to be an F-Zero game announced at that Direct or make an appearance at that Direct. That's what I got told. I don't think it's going to be. It can't be the F-Zero Advance game that's coming to Nintendo Switch Online. Like that'll probably be part of that because they'll announce like the next string of them. But they already said that was coming. I think this is the F-Zero game coming from the same team that did Super Mario Strikers, who I think is a good team to have behind that. It's been rumored that they've been doing that for a bit now. Anyways, with all that in mind, just take it all with a grain of salt until it's confirmed. Don't come yelling at me if it didn't happen. So what have I been playing? I don't know. There's games, there's stuff out there. I don't know. Oh yeah. That's right. Starfield. I am absolutely in love with this game. This is a worn game. This is a game made for me. I am a Bethesda fan. There's my New Vegas shirts right there. I love. There's my Pip-Boy. That's actually got a Pip-Boy in it, not just the box for it. I love Bethesda games. I love their RPGs. They are rarer than a blue moon. They come around once a decade, if you're lucky, and they're really special and they're really fun. This is doing all of those things it needs to, and there's been a lot of controversy about it and a lot of kind of negativity around that. And a lot of that's fed by this fanboyism bullshit that has no place, as far as I'm concerned, in the space. We've gone from the point of going, Crash Bandicoot's more fun than Mario, or the pixels on your game console are too pointy, or that game doesn't use polygons, to actually slandering people or accusing people of horrible things because they support a multi-billion-dollar corporation's plastic box. Like that it just doesn't make sense. And they're not supporting your multi-billion-dollar corporation's plastic box. That's the more important thing here. So whether you're a Sony person or an Xbox person or a Nintendo person, or when you could be like me and be completely agnostic to any of it, like I play where my games are. That's it. If I am on my Xbox because I'm playing a game that's on Game Pass and I see an ad pop up for this game being on sale in the store and it's a game that's on my list, I get it on my Xbox. If I'm playing on my PS5 and I see an ad pop up for a game that's on sale and that's on my list and I go, I want to play it, I buy it on my PS5 because that's what I'm on at that moment in time. Like I don't play favorites for a lot of things. There's some things I like the feel of the controller better, whether it's a PlayStation controller or the Xbox controller. Certain games, just driving games, for example, prime example. I like driving games and how they feel in the Xbox controller a lot better than they do in the PS5 controller, just the way I am. I have big hands. The Xbox controller feels better in my big hands for driving for some reason. But shooters, on the other hand, I find a lot more enjoyable on the PlayStation controller. Just, again, built different the way it is. Having these fanboy attitudes towards this stuff is just, to me, it's a complete negative thing, and we need to move away from that. And the big controversy around this, there's been a few things I talked about earlier. It's the review bombing of that. That's bad. It's not going to change anything. It's absolutely pointless to be doing that. That being said, if you are a person who likes to look at reviews or review scores of something, don't pay attention to user reviews. Except for in the case of something like Steam, for example, only lets you do a review if you own and have played the game. And you can actually see when you click on the review how many hours of gameplay that person has in it. So if you go to a review and it goes, don't play this game sucks, and the person has played 30 minutes of the game, they're just being an idiot, right? If they have 10 hours into the game and they're saying it sucks, Okay, maybe there's a point here. If they have 50 hours into the game and they're saying it sucks, you, I think you need to question what they consider value in their life, because if they're playing a game they hate for 50 hours, there's something wrong with them, or they're lying, right? Um, I think that's a unique perspective there that they allow you to do with the Steam reviews, and I would like to see that done across. It's going to be impossible to do, but I would like to see it done across different platforms, this kind of the same way. Um, but if you want, a good reviewer, and you want to see what that reviewer thinks of a game, I'm not going to recommend a reviewer. I'm not going to say go find Gene Parker, Mike Minotti, or Jason, whatever his name is right now, I can't remember. Uh, Schreier. Like, I'm not going to say go find these people and follow them on social and find their opinion. What I'm going to say is go back, find a game that you absolutely loved, right? You know, 10 years, 5 years, whatever it is, a game that what, maybe not even what you absolutely loved, but a game that you had an opinion on, and then go find somebody else that had the same opinion on that game, and then for those types of games, if it's shooters or RPGs or whatever, maybe take a look at what they're saying about it, right? Because chances are your tastes align. But just because they gave a glowing review to your favorite RPG doesn't mean that they're going to be a huge fan of your favorite racing game, right? So you got to find those things there, or you find somebody who's completely transparent and completely open and honest with you about it. And that's that's where I'm trying to be with it. I don't do reviews. I don't assign scores to things because I think scores are pointless, right? Here's a grade on how this game makes me feel, right? 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10, whatever it is. Like, that's a meaningless metric to me, because it's about how I feel. Like, I'm not going to go, well, my wife makes me feel a 9 out of 10, right? Like, you know, if I like it, I like it. If I don't, I don't. And I think that should be as simple of a discussion there. But what I try to do is talk about what the games do right and what the games do wrong, and my opinions on that. And that is I think, got a lot more value to it than some random number that's put in a headline. We know why it's put in a headline. And fueling this fanboy BS is a lot of stuff from what I would consider uh, legacy publications. You got your more traditional kind of verified companies out there like PC Gamer, who was a print magazine back in the day, and they're resorting to fanboy tactics, like saying how procedural generation ruined Starfield, or Starfield's not as good as Baldur's Gate 3, and which, again, these are subjective things. These aren't actual metrics that you can measure. There's no quantifiable aspect to compare Baldur's Gate 3 to Starfield with. It's not a competition. Um, you know, Baldur's Gate 3 didn't hit more home runs that inning than Starfield, because it's not what happens. And there's even a different point there. Like, Baldur's Gate 3 just released. It's an RPG. It's a completely different type of RPG than Starfield is. So when you say something like Starfield isn't as good as Baldur's Gate 3 at doing this or that, or even in general, um, you're kind of saying Forza Horizon 5 has really good open world aspects, and you can do anything you want in there and go do cartwheels and backflips and jump through lakes and stack cars on top of cars, whatever you want. Why can't I do that in Mario Kart? That's what you're saying, because those are both racing games. So surely, they're held to the same standard, right? Like, there's a subset, of Western RPGs, right? And Bethesda's a Western RPG, or Bethesda games are Western RPGs. So is Baldur's Gate 3. So is Mass Effect, Dragon Age. Western RPGs are a flavor. They're a little different than Eastern RPGs or Japanese RPGs in the past, which means to say they're different than Final Fantasies and Dragon Quests and the like, Tales of Arise and things like that. But we have, those are two like subset categories of RPGs. But we also have like finer categories within that. And Bethesda RPGs are their own unique flavor. Nobody else does them like that. Even when Obsidian did Fallout New Vegas, which they did a Bethesda style RPG, but they did it the way Obsidian would do it, and it was a different game. And a lot of people love that game a lot more than they like other games in the Fallout series because that blend, that unique flavor that they did, right? And I'm not saying it's a better game or a worse game. I personally enjoy playing Fallout New Vegas just as much as I play Fallout 3. But I think the way the systems work and things like that is a lot more refined and a lot different, right? And there's something to that, right? And even comparing that to like Fallout 4, which I don't want to say was a step back, but they stripped a layer off there and they added layers in a different spot. So there's a lot more to consider when it comes to an RPG than it just being an RPG, right? And again, they're not in competition with each other. Nobody's going to win the RPG prize. Like there's going to be game awards and things like that, but like that's not a thing. I guarantee you, everybody over at the Baldur's Gate camp is probably playing Starfield, and I bet you a lot of people at the Starfield camp are probably playing Baldur's Gate 3. Like it's just the way it is. And by that I mean the people that are making the games are probably like, hey, I can't wait to be done making Starfield this week so I can go home and play some Baldur's Gate. That game's fun, right? You know, that happens, and that kind of ties into what I was talking about. Going to talk about next with this toxic BS is, and this is just one example I picked out of a bunch of them. But Alana Pierce, who is she's a streamer, but she is primarily the writer for the God of War series of games. She works at Sony Santa Monica. She was previously at IGN, and she streams in her off time, and she was streaming Starfield, and she was praising the game, and people are saying, oh, "Why is a Sony employee doing this? She should be fired." Why? Like, what metric does that qualify for, right? Like, and that circles back into this toxic aspect of it all. We don't have when you start saying things like that, like you're showing your ignorance, right? And and that's wrong with that. Like she can enjoy what she wants to enjoy. She's not using Sony property to promote another company's platform. And in essence, her, especially when it comes to her fame was established. Her everybody knew about her, or a lot of people knew about her long before she was even at Sony. It that came with those strings when she went there, right? So knowing that she's going to be playing games online and talking on podcasts and stuff like that was part of that deal, right? Part of employing her was like, oh, this comes with it. And they embraced that and they knew that because she's qualified for that job. It's absolutely insane to be like, she should be fired for that. Are you going to, do you want Phil Spencer fired from Xbox because he likes playing Sony games or Nintendo games? Like Phil Spencer tweeted pictures last week of him at the Nintendo Live event, him and his son sitting in a one of the pipes, coming out of the pipe like a flower. Like, come on, that's like you're a fan of games, you're a fan of the art. That's a lot different. That's like saying I'm in Fast and Furious, so I can't like the Godfather movies. It's absolutely dumb. Um, and kind of with that, those preconceived issues that we were having with Starfield, um, we get into this frame rate thing. If you remember, there's a bit of controversy when it was confirmed that it was going to be a 30 frames a second game on Series X and S. Again, I said it at the time. I don't see it being an issue because the way Bethesda games are played. I've been playing it. I don't see it being an issue at all. Space combat could be maybe beneficial to more frames, but again, I don't see it being the hugest issue. It's a non-competitive, not multiplayer, fast-paced thing. The fastest-paced thing that happens in this game really is your space combat, and it's entirely manageable, and I don't even really notice it. Right, just thinking back on it, maybe a few more frames there would be good. Like, but again, it's not necessary at all. It's a Bethesda game. Those play differently than a Call of Duty game, right? If Call of Duty said, "Oh, we're locking at 1440p, 30 frames," I'd be really concerned, right? But 60 frames on that makes sense. On Starfield, 60 frames, it's not a requirement, And if you want 60 frames, you only got to spend like $2,000 or $3,000 on a video card to get you that far. So what's it to you? Um, Video card and probably a new CPU for most people. RAM, big ass hard drive, SSD. Need an SSD because the loading screens. Yeah, there you go. Or just play it on Xbox Series S or X. Right, $300. Go get a Series S. The game runs fine on an S, perfectly fine. And then there was another little bit that actually got fire up my ass here about this. People were complaining that in the character selection, when you make a character, you know how you make a character in a Bethesda game. We've all done it in Fallout 4 and Skyrim. And well, that was it really. Those are the two that actually matter. We did it a bit in 3 in New Vegas, but 4 and Skyrim had more in-depth tools. And then so you create your character and all that, and boy howdy, at the end of it, it asks you what your name is, and if you're a he, a she, or a they. And people are going, pronouns? Get out of here with these pronouns. Those people are close-minded idiots, for one, because, like, and they're like, keep your politics out of your game. Oh, because the game has nothing to do with politics. There isn't whole quest lines dedicated to politics in all of their games. But that isn't political. Like, you're creating a character. Your character looks like this, and they sound like this, and this is what their name is, and this is what you call them. Those are tools to allow the video game to address you in a proper fashion, right? There's dynamic dialogue and things like that happen in the game where it needs to know what your name is and whether you were a he, she, or prefer to be called a they. It is as simple as that. And if you can't get your head around that, I don't really think video games is a place for you to be anymore. Just stick to your FIFA or whatever it is. Well, maybe even not. Right? Anyways, there's that. Another bit about Starfield, and I'm trying to do this without doing spoilers, primarily. A big thing that I saw a lot of people talking about before the game came out for the last year or so, since it was discussed about the hundreds of planets that you could explore, is the worry about procedural generation and how that was going to work in here. And it works exactly how I said it would. They tie the planet. So you have a planet, let's call it Planet Alpha. And that is our rock-based planet. So there's that, right? So right off the hop, you have a category for rock-based planet. And then they wanted it to be a temperate climate, let's say. So it's a temperate climate with this gravity, right? And so, we're talking 25 degrees Celsius, let's say 1.07 Earth gravity. So that's 1.07 times our gravity. So a little heavier than ours. So maybe it's a bigger planet. And it's got, it's got poles. So it's got an Arctic zone, or let's say a frozen tundra at the poles. And then you have your, your plains and mountain ranges and deserts and things like that. Well, each one of those things, those are called biomes, right? So a desert is a biome, a plain is a biome, a plateau or a mountain area is a different type of biome. And then you have your oceans and all that. So what the game does is go, okay, so these are all the criteria, so this is what it's going to look like. And it does the same thing every single time for that Planet Alpha, right? Your Planet Alpha and my Planet Alpha are the same Planet Alpha, right? It's procedurally generated to make it easier and smaller to store, basically. So the game doesn't have to think about what this animated object's doing, because it's no longer being animated. It's just math until you get to it and do it. And then it becomes real, right? That is probably the smartest way to load these things into the game and make them happen, because that way you're only loading the section of it. It knows what's beyond that boundary that you're in, and it can show it to you in whatever fashion, but the minute you're not looking at it, it doesn't need to be there anymore. Right? So they can take it away, and you're saving resources every time you do that, which is another reason I think why they stayed away from the 60 frames. It's just to keep that resources smaller, which allows you to do a lot more things, like stack 20,000 potatoes on their end or whatever you want to do. And I think these were all the right choices for that. Where I think the game does have some issues, and maybe the they'll polish these up and update it out of there. But I do have issues with how the loading, or sorry, the inventory management work. Inventory management's a bit chaotic. You can't sort things nicely. You can sort things to a degree, but I would like to be able to tag things in it and then sort them out. Right. So like, hey, this thing, this thing's all junk. So when I get to a place that I can sell the junk. Right. Instead of having to go through and go, nah, I want to get rid of that and get rid of that. And what that would allow me to do is, because you can store things on your person, and obviously your companions can carry things for you, and you have storage on your ship, you have a cargo hold, you also have like safes and things like that. It would allow me to go, I'm going to put all my junk here, and then I'm going to go pick up all my junk and then go and sell it. And when I move that junk from that box into my inventory, it's not going to become not junk anymore and blend in with my inventory. It's just going to be in the junk pile. So when I get to the place that I'm going to sell the junk to, I can just go sell my junk, and that would be great. That's one of the things I would like to see improved. Things like you need to buy ship parts, for example. So not a spoiler here, really. So your ship gets damaged, you need to buy ship parts. You get damaged, you have to buy a med kit. It's kind of the same idea, right? So you have to buy ship parts. So you go to the sales guy, wherever that is, right? Whatever one you're using, and you go into the aid section of their inventory to buy ship parts, which, sure, let's put it in aid. That's what it is. It's a med kit for your ship. But then you got to carry it in your inventory. Whereas, like, logistically speaking, if we're talking about like simulation based ideas here, we wouldn't be dragging around crates of ship parts with us. We would be going, hey, bring those to the ship, right? They're parts for a ship. They're these huge crates of parts for a huge spaceship, right? So I shouldn't have to carry those in my inventory. Those should get shipped. They're sent directly to the ship. And I think it would be good for inventory management to be able to do that. We can buy things, or sorry, we can sell things from our ship inventory when we get to the store, right? So that there's an advantage there. But what about being able to buy things and put them into our ship inventory so we don't have to carry the crap around? I think that would make sense too, right? Even if they wanted to build in some sort of delivery fee for it, so it'd make it more realistic. But like, come on, I'm going to the ship store to buy ship parts, and you're going to be like, push them across the counter and go, good luck, boss, right? Hope you have a forklift, right? Because like, I got my character maxed out for what he can carry, and I am almost always over encumbered, which is great. I experience that a fair bit when I play Bethesda games, because I'm a hoarder. Apparently, I go, oh, that's worth $25. I'm not going to get rid of that, because you never know when you're going to need money. So I think that could be improved. Inventory management obviously is an important part of any Bethesda game, and it's a little short there. I would also like better details on resources. Like, they need to come up with and maybe it's in there. Maybe I just haven't seen it yet. But like a kind of like an encyclopedia of all these things. Like, when you're doing crafting, you need to find these resources. That's great, but like, it tells you what resources you need to do the crafting. But we're talking space stuff here. Like, I don't know what the hell half this stuff is. And now I got to pull up my phone and Google it and be like, so how do I get that? And like, I'm sitting here on my phone going, I don't know what that is. And Google's saying you get it from these kind of things. So maybe I got to go find a planet with that kind of stuff. And that could be improved a bit. And along those same lines, when you go to a planet and you're doing exploring, as one does in a Bethesda game, and I'll talk a bit more about how exploring and all that kind of works in a bit. But one of your objectives, to a degree, and it's a completionist objective. It's not necessarily a main objective, depending on what missions you're doing. Is you got to scan the planet, right? So in Mass Effect we did that, right? We'd pull up to a planet and we go scan it, and I go, it has oxygen and helium and CO2 and this and that and the other thing there, right? So you do that, and it tells you what it has in the planet. And then when you land on the planet, you can actually look at a map and go, it's thick in these areas. These resources are here. These resources are here. And So you can land on the planet and land on whatever resources you're kind of after in an area that has multiple resources or whatever you're doing. And then you have your scanner and you're going do looking for your things. And sometimes it'll ask you to find like a trait for the planet. So like a trait would be suitable for life. There's it has the basic needs of life, or it has a fungal habitat, which means it nurtures fungus growth or whatever it is, right? And they use terms in here. And I'm just going to whip out the old gazoogle here for the last one that I had to find, which was a turbulent lithosphere. And like in the other ones, it was like you got to find something to do with a plant life or aquatic life or something, right? And you're able to kind of go, okay, these are big words, and I know I'm a big dumb idiot, but I know what these words mean, and you can use that logic to go, okay, so it's going to be a planet that has like water or caves or these things, and I got to look in these areas because this is what it's got. And then I'm looking at turbulent lithosphere, and I'm like, I don't know what the fuck a turbulent lithosphere is. So then I Google it, and of course now I have my top 3 results on Google right now are all people going, what the hell's a turbulent lithosphere? I'm playing Starfield, I don't know. And then I got the American Physical Society's, there's a paper about the turbulent lithosphere deformation in the Tibetan Plateau. Cool. So it turns out it has something to do with how like the plates and magma and tectonics and stuff. But like still, right? So it would be nice to have that glossary of terms somewhere in there so we could figure that out. As well as when you're scanning, so you got to scan like if there's, let's say there is water, so H2O, copper, iron, uranium, chlorine. Give me another one, silver. Okay, so six resources on the planet. You got to scan one of each resource, right? And then there's animals. So there's your flora and fauna, your plants and animals, and you got to scan like a bunch of those of each one. So if there's a plant, you got to scan like that plant like 10 times or something. Not 10 times, it's like 8 times, right? In order to get that objective done of that one plant. Well, if there's 8 plants and you got to do it 8 times, that's 64 scans you got to do, right? Same thing for animals. And I think that could be smaller. Like let's maybe cut that in half on the default, and then perks can lower it. But that it's very labor intensive off the beginning, especially for people that are just kind of cutting out. People aren't going to do that, and I think that needs to be updated down a little bit, nerf it a little, make it a little easier. There are perks obviously to increase your scanner's capability and things like that, which do help that, but it's not necessarily I don't think it does enough with it. What else was there in there? Oh, I was going to talk about how exploration and stuff work a little bit. In the game, you do a lot of traveling. You do a lot of fast traveling, obviously, and some people have had issue with that, and I do kind of want to talk about that and address that in my own way. But let's talk about how space travel works first. So you're in a spaceship and you got to go to a place that is 33 light years away. Your options are to live for 33 light years, which is not happening because you're going to die in 33 years, not 33 million years, or use faster than light travel, which is, we call it faster than light travel. That's the scientific term for it. The game calls it grav jumping. Halo called it slip space. Star Trek called it warp drive. Chewie called it. So there's all sorts of different things that the entertainment business has called it over the years, and the science fiction industry has called it over the years. But it's faster than light travel. So let's imagine we're Han Solo and Chewie, and we're in the Millennium Falcon, and we've hit warp, and we are jumping from this system to that system, because that's what we do in Star Wars, right? And the stars go from dots to being streaks, and they extend across our field of vision, and we're going through space. That is a loading screen for the next system, essentially, right? You're waiting for the next system to be there. So that's what you're experiencing, is the stars whizzing past you. It's a loading screen. That's why there's a loading screen in the game when you do it. Because what else are they going to do? They show you an animation of the ship jumping, and then you wind it where you are. That is the loading screen. Like, it is almost instantaneous. You have the little wheel showing on the bottom corner of the screen. Will it be over here, right? Right about there. Little wheel going, right? While that's happening, you might get like a splash. If you decide to land on the planet directly instead of just launching in orbit, you're probably going to get like the loading screen splash of like Starfield with your name and your rank and a little tidbit and a picture of something, as Bethesda does. That is still what a loading screen is, though. It's warp drive. Like, that's what you're doing. You're fast traveling and faster than light travel. Or faster than light travel. So I don't see that as an issue if you play the game properly. And by that, I mean, you are not going to be like, I am going to jump 33 light years away to this other system so I can drop off this boot to this guy for some reason, and then jump 33 light years back so I can turn in this quest and get my $16 or whatever it's going to be worth. You're going to be like, well, I'm here. I might as well do this quest and that quest that's also here, or scan these planets and get their resources, get them off my list, explore around, see if there's anything cool. And that's what you do. When you go from point A to point B, there we go, in a Bethesda game, you don't do this. Nobody ever just goes from one point to another. What they do is they go, oh, I'm here. I'm going to go along. And what's that? A piece of candy. What's that? A piece of candy. What's that? A fucking death claw. And what's that? The dragons. And what's a terramorph? And and the boom. That's how you play a Bethesda game. You don't go straight there. You go, hey, that's a cool thing. I'm going to take a look at it. And this game is full of those things. People were saying it's going to be, boring to play because you land on a barren planet that doesn't have anything on it. And how boring is that going to be? And it's like, are you kidding me? That sounds exciting, because what's exciting about it is the fact that it's empty, right? It's barren. People don't live here. There's no cities. There's no industry. But what's that building doing there? What are they doing in there? Let's go take a look. Because that's what they did. It's not just an empty place. There's stuff. And there's stuff everywhere, right? It's not full of things. It's not like you're walking through downtown Washington, D.C., but every time you land a ship, there's something on your horizon. And you go, oh, what's that? I'm going to walk there, right? And if you're landing on a planet just for the sheer purposes of surveying that planet and poking around, seeing what's around, that's what you do, is you go, that's the closest thing to me, so I'm going to walk to it. I want to see what's there. And then, oh, there's something else popped up on my radar. Walk over to that. And you do these things while you're kind of in the same area, and you go, that's really cool. And then you go back, turn in that quest, right? You're not actually on a time limit, right? You're not going to get your Uber rank dropped because you were an hour late, right? You're exploring things. Live up to that, right? If you just mainline this quest, yeah, it's probably going to be a boring game. I haven't even finished the quest yet, or the main quest yet, right? But yeah, if you just mainlined it, I could see how it could be boring. The whole concept of it is to do all these dynamic and radiant stories and do all this exploring and tell your own story while you're doing that. Because that's what's happening. You're landing on that planet. You're going, oh, that's a cool thing. I'm going to take a look at it. When I got there, there was a terramorph in the terramorph. And for those that don't know, here is the only spoiler of the whole show. A terramorph is Starfield's idea of a death claw. It is a scary as fuck thing that scares the hell out of you. And you basically go, I'm a level 3. That thing's level 40. What the hell am I doing here? I'm running. Maybe if you live. Right? And because that's my first encounter with the terramorph was, I'm level 3. I'm getting the hell out of here. And I ran, and I took a lot of damage, but I made it. I got there just in time. And then now I am like a level 20 something, and I encountered one, and it was like a level 50 or something. and it was a hard fight, but I beat it. It took almost all of my ammunition, but I beat it. So, anyways, that's a Terramorph. Terramorphs are hard. You want to have a companion with you. But anyways, um, that's the story you're telling. Is you went to this place, you encountered a Terramorph, you found that super rare resource, and now you can build this super cool thing because you have that super rare resource. And then when you were leaving, Spacers landed in their ship, and then you went over and you killed them and you took their ship and then you registered it and sold it on the black market. How cool is that? That's your story. That's not just going to the planet and going, here's your boots, bye. That's landing on a planet going, here's your boots. What else can I run into? Holy shit, and do all this other stuff, right? And that's how you're supposed to play a game. That's how you're supposed to play a Bethesda game, right? And a lot of people forgot that or something. I don't know. But like Bethesda games have never been like, let's do a bunch of fetch quests. Bethesda games are like, here's a fetch quest. You color in the rest. They give you a coloring book and you got to go, this is what I'm making of it, right? And it's up to you to really be creative with it. And some people can say that's lazy storytelling. I don't think it is lazy storytelling. I think it's the best type of storytelling because it's storytelling that I can make my own. You guys are keeping me, here's the rails, here's the limits, right? As a developer, we go, here's the limits of the story you're able to tell. But the story that I'm telling within that is all my own. And that is so cool. That is absolutely cool. So yeah, kind of wrapping up on Starfield though. Uh, there's been a lot of fun in there. I don't want to do any spoilers in here, so I'm not going to talk about the story and how that works. There's been some holy shit moments that are part of the story. There's been some holy shit moments that haven't been part of the story. In my time playing it, I did talk about it earlier, it being relatively bug free. In my time playing it, I've encountered 2 bugs, and I just opened up my Xbox app here, and I am on the stats page, and you can see it. 2 hours, or 2 days, 10 hours, 9 minutes, right? Starfield, boom, right? Add me on Xbox there. There's my gamer tag. 2 days, 10 hours, 19 minutes. That's 58 hours and 19 minutes. I've played the game. It came out on Tuesday. I had it early. And I've encountered 2 bugs. The first bug wasn't an unplayable bug. It was a bug that I could continue playing with. It would just be annoying. And what it was I was playing, I had the controller and I was playing another game beforehand, a firefighting game. And you used the left, what I call it the select button to get into your menu, right? And in that menu, you do all your selecting things or whatever, right? So for some reason that was just imprinted in my head and it's muscle memory. And I went to go into my menu in Starfield and I hit that button. I either do that or I hit B to go into my menu because that was the button for the Pip-Boy. And for some reason, B's crouch. So yeah, I either crouch or I hit the other menu button. And that menu button in Starfield is your camera selection. So it goes into third person. There's 2 third person views and 1 first person view. So it just changes your camera. So for some reason I changed my camera and then I crouched and I just went into a panic frenzy trying to get into my menu, and I got into my menu. And then I think I needed a med packs or something. So I go in and I do whatever I need to do in my menu and I get back out and now my character will only look up and down. It won't go this way, won't walk forward or back or any direction. He'll only look up or down. I can fire my weapon. I can do anything as long as I'm looking up and down in first person. But in third person, I had full and complete control. So I got out of the situation that I was in third person, went and saved it, shut her down, rebooted, and it worked fine. And it's worked fine since. Or I've never encountered that issue since. The other issue I had is I was in Neon or New Atlantis. Probably Neon, I think. And I was over encumbered. I bought a bunch of stuff. I had like 800 something kilograms of stuff. And anyways, and I opened up a door to get into a building. And when it hit the load to get into the door, it just went back to the menu and I'd reboot the game. And I think maybe it just had a memory leak because I was being like, hey, here's we're going to move all these things that all have physics in the world, and we're going to move them all over here. And when you hit that loading screen, it just went bang and didn't work. So those are the two bugs I've encountered in 58 hours of gameplay. So I would say that is relatively bug free. I get more bugs. I was playing Borderlands with my wife last week, and we were encountering more bugs than that. And we were playing Borderlands 2, which I would say is the most polished out of the 3 Borderlands games. And it's been out for 10 years? And I've got more bugs in that game than I've experienced in Starfield so far. I know people have had bad experiences in it. I've seen some bad experiences though on Twitter and on YouTube and that. And maybe it's because I'm a Bethesda fanboy or something. I'm a fan of their games, so I'm very familiar with them. But when people are saying I'm falling through the wall or falling through the floor, what's happening? And I look at the screen and you have your console commands open and you've no clipped it. Yeah, of course you're falling through because you just entered the console command to clip through objects. To be able to just pass through walls and stuff. Of course you're falling, right? And there was another one where a person's like, I'm just in this permanent jetpack mode. What's happening? Well, you've enabled that in console commands on your computer, and now you're being daft and try to maximize on this negativity, which I don't stand for that. I can't stand for that. Anyways, that about does it for Starfield talk. I have been streaming some Starfield gameplay that will have spoilers in it. I'm not going to censor that stuff out. But if you do want to watch some Starfield gameplay, I will be going live later on tonight. And I'll be doing that kind of on a semi-regular, as I feel like it basis. I am going to maybe see about bringing a camera and a microphone out there. Not this thing, probably these. So I can chitter chatter while I do that if people are interested in joining me. So that will be happening. That's twitch.tv/wellplayedpodcast. I will also have the link for that in the description. And if you join our Discord, you will get notifications when I go live with a little handy link so you can watch it, which is even cooler. This is where I normally do the questions. I forgot to grab the questions this week, and I'm not going to go do it right now because I got to get going to pick up the kids from school. So I will catch up with that next week. If you have any questions you'd like to ask me, send it over to me on Twitter, email, or Facebook, whatever way you want. I'll create a channel in Discord for that as well. So if you have questions, you can pop them in there. Anyways, other than that, that about does it for the week. So you can find more from us on Twitter by following Amarren Studios. That is AMARREN STUDIOS on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it now. It's still Twitter to me. It'll always be Twitter to me. Or on YouTube. Our link is in the audio description of the show. If you do watch us on YouTube and want to bring us with you wherever you go, you can find us on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you find your pods. Just search Well Played Podcast. I have been warned. You have been the best audience I could ever ask for. Thank you for joining us, and see you next time. Goodbye. If you actually made it this far into the music, you get a prize. DM me.